Today on Go Island, we're meeting author Mackenzie Brown. She found herself in a women's shelter in Calgary several years ago and is now on a tour in this motorhome throughout Alberta and British Columbia, promoting awareness about psychological abuse and codependency. Today on Go Island, looking ahead with Nanaimo Mayor John Rattan, a Nanaimo woman who lost everything in a van fire, and women in trades. That and more today on Go. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. We've moved inside the motorhome now. Mackenzie Brown has been traveling in this automobile home since August when she left Calgary. Why?
We wanted to make a difference. The statistics surrounding domestic abuse are terrible. We're seeing a child in Canada hit every 3 minutes. And we also wanted to thank the frontline workers because of my involvement, they really did save my life. And I know they save a lot of lives. So we committed the next year to trying to make a difference.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit later on this edition of Go Island about how you found yourself in a shelter in Calgary. But when you say working with Frontline, so you left in August, you sort of stop in each community and interact with RCMP officers and work with organizations like Haven House in Nanaimo.
That's right. We do community awareness nights as well as teaching with RCMP, Crown Council, children who witness violence, their workers, teachers, lots of people in the community that are dealing front and center with domestic violence.
And this is unusual because you were saying earlier, Mackenzie was explaining that RCMP don't often hear from the victims, and they're the ones who have experienced and can help firsthand moving forward.
That's right. We've been told in every detachment we've worked with since August that they've never had a victim come forward and train. So it's been very valuable training.
And I know it's probably pretty in-depth and we can't cover it all here, but what would be something that you could teach the RCMP?
Well, for instance, words like shelter and transition house tell a victim in her mind that perhaps it's a place for homeless people or maybe drug addicts, and it wouldn't be a place she'd want to take her children. Right. So we spend time teaching that it's a safe house. And there's bedrooms where she can share a room with her children. You know, there's a kitchen, there's a yard, lots and lots of support, and it's a good, safe home rather than transition house or shelter.
Okay, we're going to talk about more about psychological abuse, codependency, abuse within the home. We're going to talk about those statistics and an event that's coming up in Nanaimo on January the 24th. In the meantime, here is Annette Lucas. A local woman had moved to Nanaimo not too long ago and then found herself in a terrible situation. Her van caught on fire. Annette Lucas has an update on that. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. We're in Parksville spending some time with author Mackenzie Brown. She's written a book called Living with Psychological Abuse and Codependency. We're going to find out a little bit more about your story. Mackenzie, you don't strike me as the type to end up in an emergency women's shelter.
That's what most people would say. I lived in I would consider it an upscale home in a golf course community, educated.
Good paying job.
Good paying
you were
job,
successful.
Traveled the world. Surprisingly enough, a lot of the women that were in shelter with me had that exact background. I was raised in a really good home, and I was, I think, a caring mother. And when I met this person, I felt I could help and that I would be the only one that would be able to love him through the abuse. And if I could just love him enough, maybe it could stop and he could have the life that he deserved. That was my own codependency, and all I did was enable the violence to continue.
Do you think a lot of women are in that position? Codependency is a word that I can relate to. You know,
there's so many words now. We hear codependency, interdependency. I like to refer to it as a love junkie. I'm here to help. I care. And I will care to my own demise. I didn't have healthy boundaries. In shelter, I had counseling for over a year, so I could recognize how to set boundaries and how to have the life I deserved. I think my codependency was with me long before my abusive relationship. And it's something that a lot of women struggle with. We see here in your area where we have a lot of seniors It's almost worse because the women are like, well, he's been doing this to me for so long. That's just who he is. But we're in Canada and violence isn't acceptable, and we have a fantastic system here to help.
I was going to ask you the question now, but I think we'll wait for when we come back. We've mentioned violence, but there's also psychological abuse that comes into the picture of situations that are not okay for a woman to remain in. We'll talk about that later on this edition of Go Island. In the meantime, Kelly Robinson had the opportunity to sit down with Nanaimo Mayor John Rattan to find out what's in store for 2013. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. I'm Kate Bergen. This is Mackenzie Brown. She's authored a book called Walking on Eggshells, Living with Psychological Abuse and Codependency. She left her home in Calgary in August and has been traveling through Alberta and British Columbia ever since, stopping in communities along the way, raising awareness about this issue. We've talked, it's fairly easy to recognize violence, physical abuse, not so easy to recognize the psychological abuse.
No, it's not. And it happens right from the beginning of the relationship. I was asked to rescue him.
By him?
Yes. He'd had a difficult life. I'd had a good life. I felt I was capable of doing it. And the psychological abuse started right then and there, because then it could be held over my head. And I could be, every time something went wrong, you promised to help me with this. You promised to rescue me. And that was used against me right through into the women's shelter.
And that's where the codependency maybe comes in, because in a way, a codependent would bring that upon themselves because they have offered. They've put themselves in this situation.
That's right. I would actually say if things would get violent out in public, wait until we get home and you can be mad at me, but let's just get through this. I went into keep the peace mode, and I would actually encourage him, and I'm an educated,
successful
woman, and I would say wait till we get home, and then you can be angry at me.
And that is continuing with your trying to help this person.
Yeah. As I got into shelter and I listened to the other women's story, there were 40 women in my shelter, I honestly thought he was cheating on me, because I heard this same rescue me story over and over and over. I thought they're all dating the same man. This is very typical of domestic abuse. You promised to help me. Why are you letting this happen to me? It's not what you see on TV with the you caused this. It plays on that real codependent role.
And maybe we don't have time in this format to talk about the difference between boundaries and happiness and healthiness. It's all really intertwined, is it not? You can't be happy if you're not healthy.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And you shouldn't help someone at your own expense. It's great if we go out and help other people and do good deeds and we're there for each other. But you can't do it at your expense or your children's expense.
As many women, I'll speak for myself, is that, well, I can't be selfish. It's not a good thing to be selfish.
That's right. Our generation and older really feels that way, don't we?
Yeah.
But by the time it's getting to the physical abuse or the sexual abuse, you realize, I need to start looking after me now. And oftentimes, you're so bound up in the psychological abuse. I call it my mental fetal position. The last few months of the relationship, I don't remember very much of. I just walked around in a fog, just waiting for the next episode of violence.
And how long were you in that relationship for?
The violence lasted about a year.
Okay. Mackenzie has moved out of that relationship and into a place where she is touring the province, helping others, creating awareness. She has joined the ladies at I Love My Life in Nanaimo, and they're holding an event on January the 24th. We'll tell you more about that after a short break. Still ahead today on Go Island, could you go car-free? A Victoria family gives it a shot, and woodworking women in the Cowichan Valley. That and more still ahead today on Go Island. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. That's Mackenzie Brown and her husband Scott and an aunt here in Parksville. They're actually from Alberta, but Mackenzie wrote this book. It's called Walking on Eggshells, Living with Psychological Abuse and Codependency. She has a website, iwillspeakup.com. She's been touring communities throughout British Columbia and Alberta, raising awareness. That's going to happen here in Nanaimo. Well, they're in Nanaimo because we're in Parksville right now, on January the 24th. And it's abuse that involves chocolate, from what I hear. She's teamed up with the ladies from I Love My Life, and Mackenzie will tell you more about that event coming up later on this edition of Go Island. Trends come and go. There's been a lot of tweeting lately about going car-free. Jen Moranitz introduces us now to a family in Victoria who is attempting to do just that. I couldn't imagine my life without a car. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. We're here in the temporary home of Mackenzie Brown. She left her home in Calgary in August and is traveling Alberta and British Columbia with her book, Living with Psychological Abuse and Codependency, Walking on Eggshells. Her story, unfortunately, isn't unique. There's hundreds of thousands of women across the country who have been here.
1 in 3.
1 in 3.
They say, for Canadian statistics. There's a child hit in Canada by a parent every 3 minutes in Canada.
Oh, it gives me chills.
10 calls a day for domestic abuse to the Nanaimo RCMP. We know that less than 1/3 of the cases are reported. So we're looking at approximately 30 calls, 30 incidents a day, just in Nanaimo.
So it's pretty safe to say that everybody knows somebody and that is being affected by abuse.
#1 cause of injury in women is domestic abuse.
That's crazy. One of the things you talk about in your evening that is coming up on January the 24th is how to recognize some of the signs. We'll get into the details of the event later. What is unique about your story is that you've put it in book form.
That's right, I have.
What are you hoping to achieve with it?
I want to help other victims. I want to encourage them to speak up. I want to show them that there is help and there is a support system for them and that they're not alone. And even if they can't talk within their own community, there's another place to find some help and some support and learn where to go.
Do you think real change can be achieved?
I do.
And that's why you're doing
I
this?
do. As victims of abuse, recognizing the role we play can put an end to it.
Good one. Okay. This event coming up on the 24th is going to be a powerful one. We'll give you the details on that after Terry Church introduces us to a group of women who are changing the way we look at trades. They're typically associated with men. There's a group of women who are changing that by getting their hands into woodworking. Here's Terry Church. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. Almost out of time. Big event, January the 24th. Mackenzie, it's at VIU, 7 o'clock. What is it?
It's an opportunity to discover how domestic abuse happens. It'll teach you how to reach out if you know someone involved. We have speakers coming in from the RCMP, victims assistance. It'll let you know of everything that's available in your community. And myself and my husband Scott will be there speaking. There's dessert. It's $2. All the funds support a fantastic cause, which is Haven House here in Nanaimo. And it's going to be a really informative and fun night with some great chocolate dessert.
Sounds great. And when the I Love My Life folks are involved, it's always a good time. Thanks for watching this edition of Go Island. We'll see you next time.